All right, party people. I got some, I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about? I have some stuff that I want to talk about, but
Yep, there it is.
I just lost it. Let me lose it.
I don't
know. What do you guys want to talk about? I have some stuff that
Sorry,
I
I'm just
want to talk
attempting to
about,
share this.
but
Excuse me.
I'm gonna button this top button to be a little more professional. Does it look more
Oh,
professional?
this is
Okay,
so
cool.
exciting. Look at you're just as nervous as I am. This is hilarious.
No, dude, check it out.
It's just
everybody
technical
doing
difficulty.
today? We're no technical. We're live right now.
No,
Oh.
I was attempting to share it, but
so we're live right now. How's everybody doing? We've decided to rename this weekly ritual. Instead of doing weird shit on the every Monday, we're shifting to the much more original title of Keep Mondays Weird, and that's what we're doing. I've invited our good friend Darren on here to join with us tonight. Dustin had no idea. I'm actually going to tell the story of how Darren and I met.
Oh.
So Dustin calls me up at like 11:30 on a Sunday night. It's like 9:30 my time. So it's like after midnight Dustin's time. So I was like, whoa, if Dustin's hitting me up like on a Sunday night, like after midnight, like this must be some shit. You know what I'm saying? So Dustin calls me up and I was like, hey man, what's going on? He's like, you're fucking up if you're not doing this Wim Hof breathing. He's like, as a creative, if you're not doing the breathing as a minimum, you're messing up. You better do this. I was like, bro, it's Sunday night after midnight. I'm listening to Dustin. So I was like, you got my attention. And so he tells me what to do. I write down the instructions. I was like, bet, I'll do it. I'm going to do it every day for 2 weeks. And so the next morning I wake up, I go and hide in my daughter's bed because she's in there with my wife. I do the Wim Hof breathing and I hold my breath for 2.5 minutes on the first day. And I remember freaking out and being like, I must talk to Dustin. You really have my attention. Tell me more. How do I do more? And so I call Dustin up, goes straight to voicemail. I text Dustin. He doesn't answer. And I let a few hours go by. I was like, man, what's going down? And so then I go on the Wim Hof website and I'm like, hey, and I tell my story. I don't know if Darren remembers this. I was like, hey, I've just blown myself away. I just did all this stuff. This is what I'm feeling. And then Darren's like, hey man, why don't you talk to the guy that freaking taught you this? And not in knowing that he knew Dustin, but I didn't know. And so then Dustin finally get a hold of Dustin, like, I don't know, a week later. And he's like, yeah, my cell phone charger broke. So I just decided to take a week off the cell phone. And so it was really cool because if your cell phone hadn't have broke, I wouldn't have met Dustin. And Dustin and I actually got on the phone like that week. And we actually had a really kick-ass conversation. We had a lot of value to share with each other. So
for the listening audience, he's talking about me. I'm Aaron.
Yeah.
You're saying Dustin for both parties.
Oh, am I saying Dustin?
But anyway, yeah.
I'm so excited.
Dustin's phone charger broke. And then we ended up conversing via the Facebook group, right? The Wim Hof Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and so I tell people that story sometimes. It's like if Dustin's cell phone charger hadn't have broken, then Darren and I wouldn't have had that powerful conversation we had as I was sitting in my backyard watching traffic, as I do sometimes. And so I just thought that was really cool. And
serendipity, love it.
Yeah, serendipity, and I appreciate Dustin be like, "No, it's broken. I'm not doing anything. I'm just taking a week off. I ain't driving to Best Buy. That'd be too normal."
It's interesting though, the common thread that we all share in regards to some of the work that we've done. So it's very interesting happenstance that you guys would have crossed paths in a totally different dimension of people. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So one of the things I want to talk about today, man, I'm like losing it. I had it and I lost it. I want to talk about like receiving help. Man, I had a really specific context about this too, and I'm completely lost it. So if one of you guys wants to pick something up, or we can just be silent until I figure it out. Like, I don't care either way.
Receiving help, and what do you think the context was?
No, I know that I had a conversation with somebody today, and I want to talk about, man, because I had a story about myself about when I didn't, like I used to push it away, and just like finding that balance in between and like closing the loop. But I had a really, now I'm having trouble remembering what the story was.
I bet you'll stir one up in us because it happens to everybody. Does it not?
Oh, for sure. And I think
Let's
that's the
see.
thing. I think that's the kind of one of the points that I really want to make is that it's very, very common. So one of the things is that there used to be this old behavior, and in order to stop doing this behavior, I had to go all the way to the other end of the spectrum.
Oh,
And now there's
yeah.
fear of leaving the other end of the spectrum for like releasing and swinging all the way the other way when it's just not true, you know? It's just so I mean it can be true if that's your story or you choose that to be, but in what ways? So I guess like we can kind of start there, like what's healthy ways? And I know alcoholics are an easy example of like, you know, because one of the things we talked about too, and this is something interesting, we kind of go there, is like the Alcoholics Anonymous program. And I don't know if you guys know anything about it. I don't know a ton about it other than what I've Googled and the stuff that I've talked about with friends. But
Mhm.
one of the things that, and this is from the outside looking in, so if you're an alcoholic and you participate in 12 step, like that's cool. Shoot us a question or comment and tell me I'm full of shit after I start talking. And so one of the things that I see interesting is that you get into this program and then you could be 25 years sober yet still call yourself an alcoholic. And that's just interesting to me.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I found that interesting myself. Um, I appreciate it when people refer to it as recovering or
For
recovered
sure.
alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean that's something I can get behind. Like I can cheer that guy on. When somebody tells me, you know, I'm a alcoholic, but I've been going for AA for whatever 20 years, haven't had a drink for 20 years. It's like, well, I wouldn't call you an alcoholic because if you look it up in the dictionary, it doesn't say a guy that hasn't drank for 20 years. I don't know what it says exactly, but it doesn't say that, right?
Right. Hmm.
Yeah, I think that it's really important to be self-aware in your recovery. So I think that identifying in that ritualistic "I am an addict" or "I'm an alcoholic" identity is really important because it really does need to be the absolute forefront of your recovery. However, I think that that mindset in its own right has a limited capacity in which someone in recovery ought to automatically outgrow into the sense
Mm,
where they become more empowered and their language becomes more empowered about, like you said, I'm a recovered alcoholic in past tense. Like I don't drink anymore, but I don't have a problem with it anymore. It's been 20 years. Like that's a long enough period of time to say that I don't have a problem with it anymore. I just choose not to partake. And so like having more
mhm.
empowered language, I think is missing maybe from the 12-step program, but I think it could probably would be something that someone would naturally arrive at later
Well,
on.
and so this
Mhm.
to add on to that, Dustin, this person's opinion of that program was that they spent so much time depowering the habit that part of the fear was is that as soon as you started to get like, oh, I'm doing such a great job, like, and begin to empower yourself in other ways, that they found that was the time when more and more people would begin to use again. And so, and I don't
Mm,
want to dig on Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't want to dig, like, I don't want that to be the focus. I want to more focus on just the idea in general, and how can people who have overcome certain habits begin to then turn to, for example, dude, I cheated so many times back in the day, like in relationships. Like I
mm,
considered myself, if it's a thing, like addicted to bringing people into my lives in intimate ways, getting what I wanted from that, and then releasing it without caution or warning. Does that make sense? Like that's part, I know I've told this to Dustin, I've told people on Facebook, like that was my thing. Like using and abusing people like in an addictive way was something that
mm.
I did. And I look back on that now, I'm not ashamed of it anymore. I've completely come to terms with it. I don't mind who knows. And it's just yet like what is the way that we can use this negative behavior, and how can we transition through this, and then how can we almost, instead of looking at it with that negative light, because I believe when an alcoholic, for example, they look at alcohol, it's like, that's bad. It's always bad. But then how can we shift to look at that those experiences in more of a positive light, to be empowered by it instead of.
I have a super good question, or super good answer to that question. So it's actually drawing from personal experience. I actually very recently had a conversation with someone who's 2 years in recovery, and I basically summed it up to that the whole experience from being an addict / alcoholic, and then overcoming it and being in recovery or whatever for 2 years or X amount of time, that's like a badge of honor, that having gone through that experience, that's a fucking fat dose of life. And there's a lot of humble fucking pie and like self-actualization that can happen in that sort of deep level of struggle. So love that shit. Wear it like a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I think when we can look at our suffering at that level as like a jungle, like what are those things called in the army that you run through? Those like obstacle courses, like an obstacle course for your emotional intelligence and your character as a human. If you can look at your struggles in that context, then dude, it's like badges on your fucking arm of something that you've accomplished.
No, I love that. I really love that analogy too. Yeah, because it's just like
stripes, man. Fucking stripes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
I've never recovered from a fucking drug, dude. I've never recovered from heroin. Like, holy fuck.
Oh, for sure.
I have no idea what that's like. I have no empathic connection to that. Like,
well, and even historically, you can
Amber. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it. No, it's all good.
Fuzzy there. I was just gonna say, like, you can look at it historically, in really, like, some of the greatest people in history have come from the deepest traumas, the deepest addictions, or they're the biggest outliers in society. I think have a tendency for this, what we're talking about, to fit, that fits with that outlier type personality, and those are the people that end up doing the greatest things. Inventors, all that, like Tesla.
Yeah.
Like, you look at these guys.
Oh yeah.
Edison.
Completely, like, you want to talk about weird dude.
Right. They did weird shit on Mondays and every other day too.
A lot of those
every other day too.
A lot of those really deep outliers were also from broken homes or orphaned young as children. So it's like an interesting nuance of what that can do when the world is the only thing imprinting on your mind, not your parents projecting their fears as well as the things that they do want to see onto having the world as your imprint. Like, when you're one of those people, then you really those people have made a lot of big changes in history. Like, monumental moments have pillared on people who have grown up that way. So it's very interesting.
Exactly where I was headed. Yeah.
The orphan thing is really super interesting, because I imagine, again, this is like the heroin thing, like I have no clue. But I imagine, like, there's this thing like, oh, hey, it's like the day where parents come in to like look at the children, like they're shopping for a fucking car. Like, it's but they're like all there, like putting on their best and stuff, and they're always working hard to like be better and better and better. And so that's just an interesting parallel. I never even considered that. How
crazy amount of programming going on.
No, it's very interesting how and it's also very interesting how the program can go either direction, positive or negative. Yeah. And so,
either way, it sends the participant inwards. And so that inwards can manifest in an incredible, beautiful way, or it can be a catastrophe. I mean, either way, or it could be both. Oftentimes it's both. Oftentimes it's both.
I think that's probably most of the time it's both. It's just a matter of finding that point when you can draw that line in the sand and be like, oh, this is both. And then you can put the energy towards the side that's more effective to the life you want to live.
Yeah. We could go down the duality rabbit hole if we want to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Everything has a opposite. Everything.
Yeah, absolutely. who's the, I wonder what the Facebook call if they're doing the normal shit right now.
Totally.
Talking about that stuff. So
And the shit they're talking about would probably make us look normal.
probably.
Random, just normal human.
Oh, man.
normal shit.
The distinction, I think, is between normal and natural. That's the distinction I make. Those are the polar opposites in my.
Give me an example, Darren. Keep going. I'm interested.
Let's see. So, like, normal might be to, let's see. That's a good example. So, like, say that you're having an argument with your wife. Normal might be to reacting normal. And when I'm talking about normal, I mean from like a societal point of view, like what would most people do? They would react, right? In that situation, there'd be a reaction. If you say your wife yelled at you for something that you have no idea what she's talking about, there's a reaction. And most people, that would be normal. But what's natural is to like actually objectively look at it and then without emotion have a conversation about it before a conclusion is drawn. I guess what I'm saying, it'd be normal to draw a conclusion immediately, and it would be natural to work it out, to work through it, to actually understand what the conclusion is or the reason for her yelling. That maybe isn't the best example I can think of. That's the one I thought of just now. So I think Dustin usually translate my thoughts.
No,
I
think that was perfect, man. And if anything, I'm gonna muddy it up even more. If anything,
awesome.
The reason that's so interesting, and the word choices that I appreciate so much, and why I think it's so accurate, is because if you think about humans as big cells, and you think about us being a thing that grows on this other really big cell, which is the Earth, and you think about how all that would be a singular organism. You think about the cells in our bodies, and the reason that they work together is because they work together. So you think about what's natural versus what's normal. And it's so interesting. Yes. You think about us in that way, in the same context as little cellular organisms, and us as being cellular organisms as part of a bigger organism. It makes sense. The context, natural, it's perfect. I really like it. I can't make it any better. It's cool.
I've often thought about like that thing when you see like man-made, they'll like consider some things that are man-made as unnatural, but then when you put it in the context that Dustin just said, that's like not even a real thing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the really we'll use
or is the man-made thing just as natural as the dirt?
Yeah, is it a beehive?
I think
right.
Because
I think it's exactly the same thing.
This organism that lives on this huge other organism that Dustin's talking about, the Earth, created this man-made thing. So how is it not as natural as we are as an organism?
And so one of the things that I
that.
Oh man, this is a perfect thought experiment. And one of the things that, as far as like saving the planet goes, like there's a huge push to save the planet, when in actuality the organism of the planet is going to be fine. So I wish people would like change the context and be like, we need to save ourselves.
Yeah, that's the thing, man.
Like there's all this push to save the planet, but I think that, oh man,
at the end of the day, the planet wins. Like the planet's gonna win. We're gonna lose. We're the ones that are losing.
But do you think that we say save the planet because
we disassociate everything in our fucking society, man? Because
especially with death.
Especially with death.
Yes. Yep.
The giant
number 2 fear. Number 2 fear.
Number 2 fear.
Yeah.
Oh man. So that's fascinating. Darren, this is exactly how these conversations go.
I know, it's awesome. I'm having a blast. This is cool.
And so yeah. Oh man.
That's good too.
I know. I'm just sitting there like, I'll tell Dustin with this sometimes. We had this conversation about, oh, you saw it, about like the moments of silence, and I'll just be like,
That
we
fucking
just sit here like this, like thinking about like
face.
people are gonna watch us for 45 minutes, just be like, oh.
I do every week. It's just on Tuesday morning.
Nice.
'Cause
Oh,
I don't
cool. Mm. Oh man, went from AA to orphans to freaking save the people.
To big cells,
Save,
man.
save yourselves, to big cells. Like, it's just, don't you want to save yourselves? Save yourselves.
Yeah, man.
But I don't.
Oh,
it's funny, like, why
and
don't
then
you think
that huge concept. Guess what's on the other side of that? Tiny little micro concept.
Mhm.
This infinitely is small too, because it's
why don't you
way
think we wanna
bigger than we're even talking about.
Why don't you think we want to save ourselves?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Well, why? Yeah, why isn't that what it's being packaged as? I think is a more important question, because that's the truth. That this whole, I mean, whether it's what we have to figure out the situation with this thing, with what we're doing to the planet. Like, we can't keep burning rainforests down. We can't keep slashing and burning all this shit, and we just can't keep consuming. Especially in this country, we're making like 25% of the trash with 5% of the population. Like, we just cannot keep doing this, man. And we have to corporations want us to
That
disassociate.
way, because people, they don't want to.
They want us to keep buying.
Yeah, because if we associated with it our mortality, then we do something about it. Because we do everything we can to make that go away. You know,
we'd be protesting in the streets all over the world.
You know, it's interesting. I just saw a post the other day that, well, Elon Musk said that he believes that the person that lives to 150 years is alive now. And I was like, fuck, man. Like, what does that even look like?
From now?
Like, yeah, what does that even look like? Is that like a delayed aging process? So when I'm like 50, I look 30, or like, what does that look like? Because I don't want to live. My grandfather died when he was like 80-ish, and I was like, the dude.
This is also fascinating. But before we go to that, I think I have a thought that to finish up the question of, you know, what the package of the movement, you know, that it's really us, we're saving, not the earth. What popped in my head right away was that old adage, you got to feel it to heal it. We don't feel it.
You don't.
The people are too comfortable. It's people are not concerned about environmental conditions, period. I mean,
yeah, they got climate control. What do you think they're worried about?
Yeah,
filtered outside air, heated and cooled everything.
So the context for me,
that's the root, I think.
Comfort.
So I guess the context for me is when I considered to kill myself, right? And that's kind of when I was like, oh, I just considered that like almost every day for years, you know? And I needed that to kind of finally wake up, like, you know. So what does that mean? Like when you talk about that on a, like Dustin, going back to the massive cell level. So do you believe, based on that correlation for myself, and as I'm looking at my reality through my lens, so it's like, okay, when the end game event happens, like, okay, now we'll pay attention, like that. So that's just a thing, because I needed that to happen. I needed a mental breakdown. I needed to completely physically and mentally break down into like my component parts per se, to finally pay attention, be like, oh man, I need to go meet Dustin and freaking turn shit around, you know?
Yeah, I think I'll offer, Dustin, real quick, I'll offer this up real quick, that it may have already started. I mean, just in our lifetimes, you know, Dustin's what, you're mid-30s, or just turned 30 not too long ago, right?
I turned 32 on December 25th.
32, right? And you and I, Ryan, are around 40. So
yeah, I'll be.
But anyway, like, look at natural disasters. That, I mean, when was the last time, you know, you had some pretty horrific stuff going on, and even on the Hawaiian Islands this year, right? Not too long ago. And I mean, it seems to me, just from my perspective, and I could be wrong, that the natural disasters are becoming more frequent, and they're of higher intensity. And I think that the earth is going to show us the way. And I mean, nature is, I mean, we can get into that too, but like the universe, it shows up on this planet in the form of nature, I think, in a lot of ways, right? So I think the signs are there already. It's going to escalate is where I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there. Like it's already started.
To go back to what you were saying, Ryan, about having a breakdown about thinking about you wanting to kill yourself and have it, you needed that. I agree. And if you think about any part of your body that you break down, like if you go to the gym and do bicep curls, or if you run on a treadmill, or if you break a bone even, it actually heals stronger usually, most of the time, not always. Sometimes it feels fucked up, but sometimes it heals stronger than before. So when you take into consideration the way that the body adapts to said break, your mental break is what you need, because your thinking was weak and you were painted in a corner of weakness of thinking, and that corner allowed you to go to such a low place that you broke and had stronger thinking as a result of a lot of different things. And it's a super empowering experience. That also gives you a unique perspective for someone who has been in that shoes or is currently in those shoes. Maybe perhaps more importantly, you can hear that person's voice more clearly, which is fundamental for doing the shit that you want to do as far as helping people. I mean, you wouldn't have the same credentials almost, so to speak, without having had that life experience, in my opinion, at least. It's important to know what the edge is like, man. It's real fucking important, especially when you're talking people to different edges to get them to get bigger versus smaller. I think it's super important. Badge of honor.
So
absolutely.
So I guess, and I mean, there's no way to know this until it happens. I know that we talked about, it's just like everything else, right? So in your theory, just like the way that the human body is trained to heal, we talked about this a lot last week, and just how like it's designed both mentally, physically, like it's designed to heal itself. And so like in the context, so I don't know. So this is, it's like a baffling thing. So does the earth eliminate us as a threat to heal itself, or does the event happen and then we get an opportunity to heal ourselves?
I think it's a bit of both.
Maybe.
Both. I think there's certain people who are going to be stronger and can survive certain things, and there are going to be people who are geographically fortunate, and there's going to be people who are geographically misfortunate. And I think that there's going to be a spectrum of chaos. And but I think we, as a race, as a human species, I think we are capable of coming closer together in this event. Hopefully, closer together in this event, and ultimately, I think that it would be a cleansing for the human race in the sense that it would probably erase some of the lines that we have drawn on some of these fucking maps. And I think that if a huge shift in climate change could blur some lines between some maps and erase some land and some thinking along with it, and we could start realizing that it's all one single piece of earth that we're on, and the lines are the ones that are between earth and water, and underneath that's just more land. And when we start interpreting earth as this way, I think globally as a species, we're better off. And so it might end up being a good thing that we're creating. So who knows?
Well, but I mean, you don't believe that it's anything other than a good thing.
I don't believe it's good or bad. I believe it's
I don't believe it's either. It's just opportunity, period.
Yeah, everything is a resource. The earth only provides us with resources. So anything that happens on earth is therefore also a resource.
Therefore, for sure.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is what I hear you saying is it's a cleansing. It's a cleansing of the earth, and we're part of it too. So I mean, it's a cleansing of every animal in the kingdom and plant and the plant kingdom. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's a complete
it's like a
cleansing and sort of reboot. Earth point two.
Reboot. And there is even evidence in the fossil record that this sorts of things happen on a routine basis every so many thousands of years. Like they look
like every
26,400 something years.
Something like that, like the estimate based on
the great year. The great year, that's called. Isn't that called the great year?
I'm not
that
sure.
span of time.
Oh, that's I like that. I like that. I don't know what that's called, but I think it's every 26,000 or so. And as far as the data that we've been able to collect in the last 100 years or so, the data that we can collect with the technologies we currently have, I think they've estimated that it's the Earth has gone through a freezing and heating process 4 times, I think. And I also saw this really interesting information somewhere else that if there wasn't a world-ending event and that it was just like humans were gone and we were no longer here to manipulate, like I think it's like 10,000 years and there would be no evidence that we were ever here per se. Like, and then, but then that doesn't really make sense because we find fossils from millions of years ago. Yet, like the amount of fossils we
But
have.
think about the things that we build, and think about what happens
sure.
if those things were underneath salt water for 100 years and coral
And I
growing
think
on
that's
them for
probably
1,000
the thing
years.
that they're talking about.
The planet eats shit, man. It's by nature.
Yeah.
It does. It does. It
Just
does.
continually eating itself.
Yeah, continually producing and destroying itself, and it's
Yeah.
a constant state of growth and decay in a kind of a beautiful context.
A cycle, yeah.
Yep. And the interesting part that's also, if you're going to talk about the Earth and kind of gush about how awesome it is, you have to consider the contributions made by the sun and how relentless and powerful that motherfucker is, and how that contribution of protons and neutrons and all the energy and wavelengths and different particles that we're still measuring shit that's coming off the sun. We don't really have a full concept of its power, I don't think, on Earth because it's so far away.
No.
Like we pretend like we do, but we don't. And that's it's like a symbol of masculine energy. And the sun just constantly shining and just being constant, and then Mother Nature, Earth, is this feminine energy and then you mix the two together and you have all these beautiful things covering the planet, including us. It's making giant beehives.
Pretty nice place to hang out.
Pretty nice, man. It's the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Eden.
It's the favorite place I've ever lived, as far as heavenly bodies go. It's my favorite. So,
yeah, it's
man, good. I love like the interesting direction of this conversation. Like, well, I'm not really, man. I had this thing that we just took off. That's why I really dig it. I dig it.
Sometimes it's good to talk about the Earth, man. We don't give.
Oh man. No, the connection.
It's very natural.
To this and there you go. There you go. There's
Totally, man.
Man.
Well, what else did you want to talk about?
No, well, that's the thing. Like we do our best to come in with zero plan. When we first started doing this, we used to text each other before, like, "Hey, we still going to be on in an hour?" And I stopped texting. I was like, "I'm just going to click go, and whoever's there is going to be there." So this is the way that I think is best. And because one of the things that, and I think I talked to you about this too. No, I don't remember who I talked to about this, but I've talked to somebody about this week, like with this project, whatever it is. I think one of the things that for me specifically is I know that I'm technically speaking in public, yet I want to ignore that to the greatest extent that I can, so that we can just have normal conversation and come away with whatever it is. And because one of the things in my business, I want to breed like just people sharing and being real and not, not editing it and not filtering it and not changing anything. It's like when I record the podcast, it's the same way. I record it, like there's no editing. I put it through some sound stuff so it sounds better, but I don't change the content at all because I just don't want to. Because I want people to be able to come through unfiltered and speak to each other and be more open and talk about the Earth and be like, man, that was a weird conversation, but I got some shit to think about, and that's okay. And that's why this is why we're doing this. And so,
I think this whole experiment has been like a really good opportunity to practice that, showing up authentically, but also showing up in public, because there are versions of both of those. There's a spectrum to both of those to be played with.
Absolutely.
Totally.
And what the fun part about though has been like really edging that line, and I feel like it's training me to be more authentic in front of groups without being too authentic in front of groups, because I do talk in front of groups, and it's like I think sometimes I've said too much, and other times I'm like, okay, that was good. But I think this is practice at you know, edging that line out and feeling good about it and wielding it with like charisma in a way, which is really cool.
What do you think you've said too much about?
In workshops?
Yeah, like I'm super interested to what you'd consider crossing the line.
I just keep it super real, man. Super real. And
Oh no, you got to give me an example. I'm so excited to find out what's
Tell
going on.
this, Dustin. Tell
I think
the
it's
story that you told me the other night. The one about like showing up to your own workshop late because you had to go get something.
Oh, okay. So this was like a really fun experiment for me on Saturday morning, helping out a really cool friend of mine with the workshop. And long story short, I was a little bit bummed because it had got canceled. So I had like a negative mindset around some certain things. And this would have been like an issue for me as I was going through it. And for some stupid fuck reason, I allowed that to manifest in me forgetting something super important that I needed for this workshop at my house. And I realized that as I'm getting to the workshop, I'm like, oh, I forgot this thing that I really need. And so I had to go leave to go get it. And so I'm running around like a crazy man to go get this stuff, like literally running because I have to be fast, and I'm parking and running and all these things. And I run directly back up to the workshop after bringing all these things. And I basically just run in front of a group of people. And I like had to de-escalate myself and like literally use the tools that I was about to give these people, right, and use it right in front of them. Like one of the cooler monkey see monkey do's that I've done in my workshops was I just really went from totally ramped up to right, and then was able to admit right away what had happened. I didn't get into the gritty details, but I told them more or less what had happened, that I had forgot something, and then I said I actually used some verbiage that I learned having this conversation on Facebook. I said yeah, I was usually when I start these workshops, I have a really nice speech about where I came from and how I got to the method and what it's done for me, but I'm going to go a different direction with this one, and I'm going to talk about responsibility and what it really means, or what it can mean. And I said responsibility, like we talked about with Kat, and I took super ownership of what I had done, more or less, and forgetting the things that I needed, and then allowing them to witness me coming in the way that I did. And it was amazing. It was super empowering experience for me, and I felt really, really connected to that group of people. And I felt like it's a great way to take the stage, to just give a little piece of truth and a little bit something that maybe you're a little bit scared to say about yourself, people you're going to talk to. And after that, everything's super easy, right? After that is it was really cool.
I love that story so much, and I think it's very, very similar to the way that your cell phone charger breaks and then Darren and I meet.
Yep.
And how it's just this, like we have one conversation with this woman, and it was so like had this very powerful conversation here doing the same forum as we were doing, and then that respondability thing, and it's I want to pay homage to you have everything you need to be successful. And there is something that I'm learning today in this conversation that I'm going to change the world with tomorrow or next week, or like with this thing. Like, and I tell that story. I've told that story about meeting Darren several times, just the way that it happened. It's like people are like, well, you think everything's connected? I was like, no, check this story out. Like Dustin, just his cell phone charger broke and he decided not to go buy a new one. And that's how I met this guy, because of somebody who lives 3,000 miles away. And then one day, like how I like spontaneously met Kat, and then the way that her and I got together and the stuff that we did work together on is like, hey, let's bring you in and you can meet my buddy Dustin, and then bang, respondability. And then this amazing resource, I won't even say opportunity, this amazing resource of you didn't, and so it's funny because you said this negative self-talk, but it like gave you this amazing opportunity to have these people got this amazing experience and got to see you use the tools in real time in front of them right before they learn it. Like what a way for that to really stick.
It was cool.
You know, and it's just like, and so like when I said earlier, like there's no way that it's never good, because eventually like we realize a resource, whether it's in 5 minutes or in 50 years, like, oh, I know what this is. Thank goodness I watched freaking Tool Time with Tim Taylor. I have no idea where that came
small
from.
can you make the window though? That's the goal, man.
Mhm.
That's the
For
exercise.
sure. Like, how small can you make it?
Yeah,
100%.
it could take 15 seconds or 15 years. The sooner we can see our struggles through this filter, because that's all it is. It's another bullshit filter. If we just want to be so super real, it's another bullshit filter. But how quickly can we put it on? Because there's gold in it. If we use that filter, we can pull gold right out of bullshit. And I don't know. That's super empowering, man.
Well, which
I
it
love it.
ties into everything we've been talking about tonight. Really, from the very beginning, Ryan, you referenced the story you told at the beginning, to like the outliers in history, you know, making the huge difference, coming from turmoil in their lives in one shape or another, to you know, considering whether you're going to off yourself or not, to greatness. In a moment, what Dustin's talking about is the same exact thing.
Exactly. It's all.
It's the same exact thing. He took this moment of aw shit chaos and brought it to order and used it for a positive thing. And like, that's where greatness stems from. Like you just said, it's like, it's already there. it's already within us. It's like, it's just, how are we going to let it out? And we just have to be paying attention. That's all we got to do. If we're paying attention, then we can use it.
And calming our nervous system, because that's important part for me to authentically allow my message out, is to not have the horse inside of me kicking like an idiot because it's out of control, because my monkey brain is scrambling like an idiot because it doesn't know what to say or think or feel. Being able to de-escalate and actually think clearly.
Yep.
It's good stuff. It's just
gotta
really
get uncomfortable once in a while.
Breathe through your nose is really the simplest thing. Just breathe through your nose all the time. Well, it's been fun, guys.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's where we'll leave it. Darren, thanks for joining us today, bro.
Yeah, and this is awesome. I
love it.
I'd love to come back sometime. I really would. This was great.
Rotation, man.
Hey, just out of curiosity, if we wanted to have more than, what's our amount of people we can squeeze in one of these Zooms?
So this is how we fix the problem. When you're not talking, see how that happened? Exactly. You mute yourself if you're not talking. So that way you have to be super intentional about when you're gonna talk. And I think that we can probably let's try it with 4. We've done 3. Let's try it with 4. I think 4, because then because I put this in a gallery view so they can see all 4 of us at the same time. Be like a nice little square. And then, like, you know.
That's what it looks like on Facebook as a gallery?
Yeah. It looks like 3, like 2 on top, 1 on the bottom right now. I think that's what it looks like. Let me look. Yeah, because I put it in the gallery view. Are you guys seeing 3 pictures at once right now?
No, I see 3 pictures up at the top, real small, and then you on the bottom.
Yeah, I see all, or myself and you two. So 3 pictures at the bottom, and then myself in the big picture.
Oh yeah. Well, if you look on the Facebook, you'll see how I have it set up so they can see all 3 of us all at the same time. So if you think Darren's face is up there and you're like, like everybody's watching you, so it's cool. So it's yeah, I think we could try a 4th person. So if anybody's watching these ever wants to hop on, or something you want to talk about or share, or if you just feel like coming on here and like digging whatever conversation comes up. So this is like, I appreciate this so much, because this is like, I get to work out a whole bunch of stuff and just kind of get to be. And this, I always feel super good. And then I have one more call a day, and I crush it on my call after this call every single week. So it's like my most favorite thing. So this just, I get so lifted up and like, there's nothing I can't solve, you know? And so
it's a really good Monday on day ritual. One of my favorite mentors, Casper Vandermolen, does these Monday on day posts, and they're usually pretty dope and pretty entertaining. But this is like a nice ritual for me that's really in the spirit of that. Like the idea of just kind of, I don't know, man, a nice little ground in for being me for the week.
Well, it's just like starting the morning right. It's starting the week right.
For sure.
And keeping a fucking commitment too, honestly, man. Like keeping these little commitments on Mondays, dude. It's been winning for me.
Yeah, me too. I love it.
Yeah.
So do you guys want to keep this for New Year's and Christmas? Because they both fall on Monday this year. Christmas Eve
really?
and New Year's Eve. Mm-hmm.
I
We could
can
adjust
squeeze
the
it.
time of the
I'm
Yeah.
sure I could figure out how to squeeze it in. The Broncos are playing, so it's a little.
Mhm.
I can
Oh,
sneak
no
out.
shit. New Year's
Consider.
Eve and yeah, I
and
think I
Monday
could
this
probably.
year.
Dude, I did it from my phone and it was totally legit. So
I'm moving all my clients off of those days. So if it's just this, like I could squeeze that in for sure. And then so that's an easy yes for me for New Year's and Christmas Eve. So it's 45 minutes. It's all good.
keep
Heck yeah! I mean,
commitments. I might be fucked up
I'm
on.
gonna keep them in, dude.
You
No,
know,
it's cool.
I'm gonna be in Tahoe, so I might be on a mountain with no shirt. Who knows? But
Dude,
I'm
it's
cool.
good. Dude, it's cool.
perfect.
The ladies will love it.
I'll be jealous.
So it's cool.
Mhm.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Darren, yeah, I'll touch base with you offline to see whether we'll I say let's bring Darren back next week and let's find somebody else to get in here too.
Yeah, totally. I'm down.
We'll test the
I'm in.
4-person thing out to see what
I'm in.
happens. Cool. All right, I'll add you to
We'll have
there.
like a
and,
consent microphone conversation before we start.
This is actually the first conversation us three have all had together.
Ever
which
had.
is pretty cool.
Ever.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Darren, how about you pick the person and don't tell us who it is and just send me an email address. Yeah.
Okay.
That way, because I've known all week that you were going to be here and I didn't tell Dustin because I didn't want to. Because I want
Well, I
to
did.
Oh.
I found out yesterday though.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
But it was still
All right,
it was nice. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good. I'm
Find
glad.
somebody, don't tell us who it is, and just send us an email. Send me an email address and I'll put it in the invite.
Here we go.
Say Jane Smith at Gmail because I'll be like, I'm gonna Facebook stalk whoever's so it's whatever. I won't look them up.
Yeah, here we go. Another enrollment exercise.
Hell yeah, man. No, it's easy.
No
Dude,
problem.
this is fun. I love it. Cool. Dude, I'll talk to you later.
See you, boys.
Later.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Super fun. Love you guys.
Mhm.
Love you too.
Peace.